All right, welcome to Ronin Radio. This is Skye, streaming to you live from Nairobi, Kenya. It's been 3 months since I led the Calling All Men Summit, and it's been many months since I've done a new Ronin Radio podcast. This is the first time I'm doing the podcast solo, so this is an experiment for me, simply talking to the camera or talking to you. As a way of announcement, I have a very exciting program coming up for men, and I may say more about that later in the program today. But the big announcement I want to make today is that I will be resuming the Ronin Radio broadcast Tuesdays and Fridays. I will be live streaming Ronin Radio with Comyn, my fearless co-conspirator in the Ronin Radio podcast. We have about 100 episodes that have been put out over the years, going back to the beginning of the pandemic in 2020 when Hans and I escaped to an island, practically deserted island in Brazil, to call out to men as the zombie apocalypse started. So today I'm going to be reviewing a video. This is an interview by Jordan Peterson of Rob Henderson, talking about his life story and new book. And, after filming the Calling All Men Summit, my big takeaway, and one of the things I wanted to do with that summit was, I wanted to interview a bunch of men who are working with men and boys today and I wanted to understand the nature of the crisis that men and boys are facing today. And after interviewing 70 plus men and hosting the summit, I'll sum it up like this. This epidemic of lost boys, of emasculated men, of uninitiated men, men not taking on responsibility, men going their own way, men overdosing and dying, men committing suicide, men choosing not to take on responsibility for their life or their people or more people than just themselves. The way I like to think about this is that most men today are Ronin or sons of Ronin. And I'll explain what I mean. So if you take the legend of the samurai, and a great way to get a sense of what I'm talking about here is watch the movie The Last Samurai. It was filmed probably over 20 years ago today. But it's a very powerful sense. The lead character is he has everything. He has mastery, he has courage, he has strength, he has a tribe of brothers, you could say, his fellow military soldiers, fame, he has women, he has it all. What more could a man want? But he does not have his honor, and he's absolutely suffering. And hello to Jaw. It's an interesting name, Jaw, who's watching in the live stream. So the main character is lacking his honor. And through this journey, he eventually comes to spend time with the samurai who kidnap him and take them to his village for a season. And he experiences, for the first time, profound sense of honor and men living by honor. And before, he could not fix or heal from his suffering. But living with the samurai, he finds a way to reclaim his honor. Well, Ronin are men who used to be samurai, who cast off who walked away from their code of honor, betrayed their tradition, and betrayed their people, and are now living free, but in shame. So they're now masterless and free men, but they're living with shame. And this is how I would describe most men today. is that, if we've walked away from our religion or tradition, our fathers, our, the way of life from the past, in judgment of our fathers or forefathers, we are now living in shame. And even though we may not realize that we're living in shame, the reason we don't realize it is because we are avoiding it through addiction and distraction, busyness. But deep in our core, there is a resistance to facing ourselves, to facing others, to facing reality, because of this underlying shame, which points at this deep and profound missing of something that is natural and healthy for men. And this is honor. So what is honor? I'm going to talk about that in today's video. So I'm going to just do a quick review of part of this video. And in this film, or excuse me, in this interview, Jordan Peterson and Rob, they're talking about, Rob's troubled life as a fatherless young man. And when I say fatherless, of course, everyone has had a biological father, but Rob never knew his father. And most young men who don't know their father are really struggling. And men who didn't know their father, I would call them sons of Ronin, meaning that so Rob was never, the way I'm using this metaphor is like, if you're samurai today, what this basically translates as is you were raised in some powerful, strong connection to a way of honor in life. You were brought up to have a role of honor for your people. You were brought up into, you were initiated into an identity where you have a powerful role of honor for your people. And so Rob never had this, so he was not samurai, and he didn't leave that path. So he's not a son. He's not a Ronin. What he is, what I would say is he's a son of Ronin, meaning that at some point his father or ancestors left the path of their fathers and a way of honor. And then here he is alone as a son of a Ronin, a man who never knew a way of honor and never knew his father. So what is honor? Well, in this interview, Rob and Dr. Jordan Peterson are talking about the power of young men finding structure. And Jordan brings up, maybe structure is not as important as finding a vision for your future. And so Rob is exploring this idea with him, and he's saying, that actually I agree, because there was this moment when my two mothers, so at this point in his life story, his mother, I guess, is married to another woman, and they essentially give him a role of honor for the people. And so I would not say this is as much either structure or having a vision of your future. This is about having a role of honor for his people. And it was in one small way, but it made a big difference for him. So I'm going to start the video and then just do a brief analysis of it. So let's give this a shot here, see if there's
pickups along the way and after. But I remember I was 13 years old, and my mother and her partner Shelly, they I had some chores and some responsibilities around the house, but they wanted me to build a fire in the mornings so that the house would be warm by the time they got up at 7 o'clock to get ready for work. So they asked me to get up at 5:45, 5:30, and do this for them, because heating a home with firewood was less expensive than central heating, and Northern California can get a bit frosty in the winters. And I remember I argued with them about this, and I was angry. This idea that I had to get up so much earlier than everyone else in the house. And my mom and Shelly sat me down, and I'm 13 years old. And again, I probably wasn't thinking that much about the future, but they used this. They said, Shelly, she sat me down. She said, your mom and I work all day to pay the bills. And, you're getting older and you need to contribute to the house. And they said, you're the man of the house. And I remember when they used this term, it sort of reframed that chore. It went from this burden being put on me that I wanted to battle against to, no, I'm a productive member of this household, and I'm doing something for my moms, for my adoptive sister. I'm doing something to make their lives easier. And so
here he's talking about being given a role of honor for his people. And this is something, this is a great role for parents and for fathers and for elders, is to bestow upon the young man these roles of honor, this burden, in a sense, this role of responsibility. And a lot of people talk today about men being emasculated. What is it to be emasculated as a man? To be emasculated is to have your role of honor for your people taken away. To no longer be honored for your role, respected for your role. It's to no longer have an identity as like who you are as a man for your people. This is what it is to be emasculated. But so many men have never been masculated to begin with. They've never been initiated. They've never been given a role of honor or a new identity in terms of who they are as a man for their people. So again, he's talking about one somewhat small responsibility, which probably at 13 felt like a very heavy and burdensome responsibility. But he's going to talk here about how this role of responsibility made him feel. And we're going to notice how he describes this feeling. And we're going to talk about it because this is very important for us men who desire to be powerful, to be powerful leaders for our people, to reclaim our authority, and to be masculine men, and to be patriarchs in the most beautiful and powerful sense of the word.
Perhaps what you're saying about this vision of the future, if it's put in the right way, if the story is told in the right way, and that's what that was. The man of the house was this vision, this story. That it did unlock something for me in my mind, but it had to be presented to me in that way. I wouldn't have arrived there on my own.
No, right. But I mean, I would say that is the opportunity of responsibility, right? And it does, because it's very easy, and this is why conservatives, I think, have a hard time talking to young people. It's easy to make an obligation into a finger-wagging necessity, right? Like a moral obligation. But that isn't the right way to frame a genuine responsibility, because if it's a genuine responsibility, it actually matters if you do it. And the reason it matters is because if you don't do it, things actually don't go well. Like there's a value to your sacrifice. That's a good way of thinking about it. And they did strike the right chord with you. And I remember that part of your book, because what they indicated to you was that was a way of signaling your mature worth, not of signaling it. I don't want to use that language, of expanding yourself up into that role. And so how long did you light the fire, and how did you feel?
So Jordan's about to ask him, how did you feel about this role? And again, I want to pay attention to how he talks about the feeling of having the role, because this is what we're talking about when we say honor. It's very important for men to understand honor as a feeling, to be able to navigate this from moment to moment, to be able to return to honor when it's lost. It's a very powerful way to navigate conflict, to navigate the unknown, is to be able to return home to this feeling. And when a young man is growing up in a house where maybe he just has a mother, he doesn't have elder men, he has not been initiated, it's normal for him to navigate by approval of the mother, right? So how does he find safety? How does he find comfort? How does he survive? By making sure he lines up with the approval of the mother. And there's other ways, there's other survival strategies, but this is what many young men do today, which is in a lot of ways, an honorable impulse to obey your mother, to stand up for your mother, to perhaps align with your mother against a man or a father who has threatened your mother or something like this. It's often an honorable impulse, and it's a pro-survival impulse to want to obey your parents, have their approval because they're providing sustenance and the roof over your head and everything else. But at some point, the young man must be initiated. Masculine honor must replace approval of the mother. And what happens for many young men is they don't evolve, they don't receive this masculine honor from the father, from the male elders. Instead, what takes its place is a resentful judgment of the father, a resentful judgment of the masculine. And men who, I'm tempted to say boys, but older males who have not taken on a new identity of masculine honor are men who cannot be trusted by women later in life, by other men, and they're likely to become more like the father they judge eventually. So, all right, so let's come back now and let's listen to how he talks, how Rob talks about how did you feel being given this responsibility?
What about doing that?
It was for that entire winter, and actually even the winter after that. And I felt great about doing it after that. I mean, day to day, it was, obnoxious and burdensome. And, there were mornings I woke up and wished I didn't have to do it. But when I would see, my mom and Shelly and everyone in the house wake up after me, and, the house was warm and I could see that, and people were comfortable. And, when I woke up, it was freezing. And then when they woke up, it was warm. And I would go to school in the mornings with that knowledge. And
right.
Yeah, I felt good about myself for doing it.
So he says, I felt great. And he goes on to say, yeah, I had the resistance. There were days I didn't feel like doing it. But when he did and made that sacrifice, and then he got to make this difference for his people, he would go to school and he would feel good about himself. This feeling good about himself, this is the feeling I'm referring to when I say honor. It's very important to give this feeling a name because we don't have a name for it in the English language. You'll hear many people talk about it and they'll say, I just felt good. I felt good inside. I felt this inner peace. I felt this warmth. So the more that we can name something, the more that we can develop skill and facility, competence with it. And this is what many of us must reclaim, is a way of honor in our life, becoming men of honor, returning to this sacred responsibility of men going back forever to have a sacred role of honor to fulfill for your people. This is what it means to be a masculine man, is to have this role of honor. And so let's go. Okay, so, I was raised samurai in the sense of, obviously, I'm not Japanese. I was not trained in the way of the sword. I do have a distinction called Skye's sword I came up with as a young man that remains powerful to this day. We won't talk about it now. But, so I'm talking about nothing like that. But I was brought up in a very serious life or death sense that I was spiritually a warrior and I had a mission from my Heavenly Father to fulfill in this life. And I was to give my life to and make sacrifices for, and lives and people and my family hung in the balance. and there was a war to fight. And there was a way to become acquainted with this feeling of honor, this way of honor, this force of honor. And I was trained in this way inside of this religious context. And after leaving that religion, upon leaving that religion, I had a profound experience of honor. I'll share the story. I've shared it elsewhere in Ronin Radio broadcasts, I do believe. But I had that experience. And then a few years later, I felt this calling to share with 3 younger brothers of mine what I had discovered out in life on my own, including this way of honor. And as I did, I took in younger brothers who were 18 or 19 and about 22 at the time, lost young men who had not been initiated, had not been given, a heavy role of honor and responsibility in life for their people. And I had a profound experience giving them a responsibility in the form of a business to run on their own. I split up my landscape business into 3 parts and gave each of them full responsibility of each of these parts. I won't go into detail now, but I saw them, guys who had practically no responsibility other than to work their minimum wage job for me, play Nintendo, get high, order pizza with their minimum wage earnings, and hopefully pay their rent on time. They all 3 lived together. They went from having practically no responsibility in life to very heavy responsibility, not just for themselves, not just for their clients, not just for guys that work for them, but to each other. We developed a very powerful brotherhood that we called an alliance that year. And so they had a big responsibility for each other. They had a role of honor for their people. And they went from boys to men overnight. Like their transformation, their adoption of responsibility was profound, and it was joyous, and it was pleasurable, and it was powerful. They hadn't experienced themselves as powerful, for the first times in their life and at a level they hadn't before. And so, I'm just concurring here, Rob's experience of taking on responsibility for his family with the fire is, it's like, this is part of what's missing for young men today. Now, what's the great venture and mission before us as Ronin or sons of Ronin is not just to reclaim our honor. There's a lot else that must be reclaimed as well. But honor is a big part of it. And you can think of it as the fire in your heart. And, so many young men today are without purpose, without, like, who am I? A sense of who am I? A sense of like my life really has meaning. So they go wandering off looking for meaning and purpose, which is, would be funny to many men forever in history, because you wake up and you gotta survive today, and you gotta help your tribe, your family, your children survive. Purpose was implicit in life itself. So the fact that we have to search for a purpose is just indicative of how sad this and how deprived we are of something so powerful and so beautiful, so natural to a man in life, which is honor. So Rob gets a taste of it, and he's going to talk some more about it here. So we'll go on a little further in the video. We'll say a bit more about it. And here we go.
Doing that. Yeah.
Yeah,
and that was one of the bright spots.
See, that's very that's so interesting, right? Because that shows you too that that the idea that you're inhibiting your impulsiveness is not right. What you're doing is you're transforming the idea of responsibility into an incentive reward, technically, by associating with an overarching goal, but a genuine goal. And you might say, well, goals are arbitrary. It's a moral relativism argument, but they're not arbitrary because, for example, if the house is cold, then people suffer. Now, you could say, well, that's arbitrary too. But, if you're the sort of person who thinks that suffering is arbitrary and you can make relative arguments about it, there's no sense talking to you anyways, because it's just not going to go anywhere. But it's so interesting to see that, the proper framing of that task I understand the fact that it was still difficult you still had to get up in the morning when it was cold and light the fire,
Yeah.
So it didn't change the proximal discomfort, but they awakened you to a higher order way of apprehending your environment, and it's clearly the case. It's continually the case through your autobiography that when someone opens a door like that for you in a way that got to you, that you found credible, that you're instantly motivated. You even did that to yourself to some degree with reading.
So this is very powerful as well, and this is what we as men must reclaim. And this is elders, mentors. It's that figure that comes along on our hero's journey, or the one that calls us to adventure in the first place and is willing to walk with us away, who sees greater potential in us, is willing to show us a few things, willing to confront us, and plays a role more of being true to our potential, that great man that we could be, than to the limited boy or male or young man that we are, that man who sees our greater potential. This is also what men must reclaim, and this is very hard for the guy who had no father, no relationship with his father, or who still harbors resentment towards his father. To the extent that he harbors resentment towards his father, he now stands over his father in judgment of his father, looking down upon his father. And there's no welcome for the mentor to show up. There is no welcome for the elder to show up. And he might think that he wants a mentor. He may think that he wants an elder. But when that elder shows up, he is going to reject him sooner or later. He is going to reject him and resent him as he did his father, as he does his father. So, men, for us to fully reclaim honor in our lives, and for us to reclaim elders, which is such a priceless role to have, for us to have elders, we must honor the father. We must put things in the right order, which is not standing in resentment, looking over this human who happened to donate half of your DNA, right? Who now you stand in judgment of because he's not the father that you thought you should have had, or that you wanted, or that you think you needed. We must take our place under the Father, look up to the Father, honor the Father, not as a God, not as a perfect being, as a man, as a human. And as we do that, now we create an invitation for older men to show up in our life and be that elder, truly help us along our way. And as we establish those relationships with men, now we can become a man who is accountable, because otherwise we want no man to truly hold us accountable. Who are you? You're not my father. My father I resent anyway. Or you are just like my father, and so get out of here. So even for us to have brothers, to have warrior brothers, to have men, we need to do the work of honoring the Father. This can include the Father in heaven. This can include Father time. This can include all that is masculine. This can include stepfather. This can include older brothers, etc. And we have, a lot of us have this work that we have to do with multiple older men in our lives. This is to allow ourselves to receive the gift of honor, inside of our heart, you know, in our psyche. It is very hard to not live with self-judgment if you have resentment towards your father. And the more that you can honor the father, the more honor you will receive as a feeling. This feels like self-esteem in the moment. The more you can have this and live with this, know this, and have this be your home base that you come back to. It's also important for men who want to have warrior brothers. You know, these are brothers who will hold you to account, that will have you back, have your back, that will not treat your rationalizations and whininess or bitchiness or whatever as who you really are. They will set a flame to the child or the teen in you so that the man in you can rise like the phoenix in the fire of the kind of accountability that masculine men hold each other to. So, and there is a distinction to make between masculine honor and honor. Honor being a feeling, masculine honor being more a way that you hold your authority. Right. Well, there's a lot more to say about authority in a powerful, beautiful sense, not the warped version of authority that most Americans and most of us being raised in these modern, free, individualistic societies tend to have. Yes. But at the beginning to feel like I could go on too long just rambling by myself. So this and more to be continued in upcoming Ronin Radio broadcasts. Again, look for Comyn and I on Tuesdays and Fridays. We'll be doing a live stream, but you can also catch the new episodes on our Ronin Radio YouTube channel. There's also a new Elder series there. This was a series that mostly went live on our Facebook pages towards, well, it was in the late summer of 2021. Yes, but we've just posted it to this series to our Ronin Radio channel. I highly recommend that series, talking about reclaiming, bringing back elderhood. And young men today need elders, desperately need elders. So if you are an older man watching this video, you are needed. You are a gift. You can be a gift. Young men need elders. But we've mostly lost contact with what that means. We've lost respect for elders. We've lost honor for elders. And in that way, we have emasculated older men. But we can re-emasculate, if you will. We can take back these masculine roles of honor for our people. And this is what is there for us to do. So, yes, and I'll say that there is an upcoming honor quest, a 6-week honor quest for men who are ready to do the courageous work of honoring the Father. Now, it can transform your actual personal relationship with your actual Father. But what it's even more about is your relationship to your experience of the Father and your experience of the masculine within you. And that can change your whole life. And this is about receiving honor in your heart and as a calling to being a next level man who takes on next level responsibility for his people. And this responsibility is profound purpose and it's pleasure as well. So if you're interested about that, reach out to me and we will see if you are ready and you can apply to join the next honor quest. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please leave us your comments, questions. We can address your comments in future episodes and more soon.